Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Eric. I'm an Angular developer. I have been for 7-ish years. I've been doing it professionally in my day job for at least 5 years, maybe six. And this is part 4 of what is turning out to be a very long series of live coding videos to get to create a new test helper that's going to be able to allow you to stub any asynchronous method in your tests in a way that you can then interact with in a similar pattern as the Angular's HTTP testing controller, where um, you the production code makes the call anytime it wants, and then later you call expect one to see that it was made, which gives you back a test request, and you call flush or error. That's the most common workflow. At the end, you make sure that you've caught all the production cases and there's no unexpected ones with this verify. If you're an Angular developer, you're probably used to that. I find myself, for example, working with the example that I've been using for writing the tests for this test helper have been with the browser's clipboard API on navigator.clipboard, where there's asynchronous read text and write text for paste and copy. Um, and I've used that in a couple of my apps. I've used some other browser asynchronous APIs in a couple of my apps, and I want to be able to test them in a way that has all of these kinds of features. So anyway, um, we have made a lot of progress in previous videos now. Um, we might even be able to finish up the actual production code in this video, or at least the core parts of it. Um, I've got myself a to-do list here now, prioritized above this line of things just to finish up this feature. And so the next one I'd like to do is this sort of, so we've got already a match function, which is here. And currently it only takes an array, sort of like in the Angular API, which I'm trying to follow as closely as makes sense as possible. Um, and match would normally take, uh, you know, I did this one first, and now I want to add sort of the equivalent of one of these other ones that's a convenience. So I can explain this a lot better by just showing you what would change. Um, so let's open up match and write a failing test for it, and then you'll understand what I'm talking about, and we can go on and write the production code. So let's rewrite this one, but in a way that allows accepts an array of arguments to match against. So we'll keep this the same. In our test, we're, as I said, using the clipboard. In this case, we're using the write text call. So we're going to make 3 of those. This is our setup. This is exercising. This is sort of 3 paragraphs with blank lines in between. At the top, we have the test setup. In the middle, we have exercising the actual code that we're testing. And then at the end, we have the expectations. That's the pattern I like to follow when it works out to break it up that way in a single test. Sometimes they are more complex, but this one should work just fine. Okay, so what we want to do here is match. Let's see. Let's grab value 2. So we want to find the call where we passed in value 2. And actually, why don't we do value 1 and get 2 matches again? Yeah, that's basically it. So then this is what I want to accomplish. Instead of passing in a function, I'm just going to pass in an array of the arguments that I want the function to have received, the controlled method to have received. I want to find all of them that match that. And then to verify it, I'm going to see that if I loop through the matches and pick out the function calls that were passed, the arguments that were passed to the function calls that are in my matches, they should both be value 1. All right, so that is not even a failing test yet because it's not a compiling test yet. So the first thing we need to do is allow this to be an array. This is the to-do we're tackling right now. So this could be, we don't know what it could be. It could be an array of any. Later, we're going to come in and do all of the typing. So by the time we're done with this whole thing, we should know what all the different types are that you created this controller to wrap. And we should be able to make our typing real nice right here. So instead of an any array to represent the arguments, there we go. Instead of an any array to match the arguments, we can make it, require the user to pass in arguments of the format that the function accepts. But anyway, that's something that I'm going to tackle in a separate video, just because I want one video with just the typing, all the typing, for someone to come just learn about how my process of typing and figuring all that out in one searchable go. So that I expected to fix this. Oh, that's in the expect one. We do want it there, but right now we're doing it in the match function. So let's start with it here. And we'll need to make that, oops, oh goodness. We'll need to make that match. Now we have an any down here that we're going to have to come back and fix up in that next video. Oh, is that the comment I deleted? Oh, sorry. I didn't actually read it before I deleted it. I assumed it was the one that I was fixing right now, but it was not. So what we need to do here is get match to be a I just want this to be a failing test right now. So let's say if match if is array array.isArray, there we go, match. We're going to instead make it a function that returns, I don't know, true. And we'll turn this into a proper predicate once we see that the test is working. What do we have here? Async method controller 54. Oh, that didn't fix the typing. So this was not enough to tell TypeScript that below this line we're sure that it's a function. That surprises me. That surprises me. Here match is saying is still it still thinks it could be an array. Well, in that case, let's be a little fancier. Let's make a filter function, and we'll say if it's an array, then we'll make our filter function this thing, otherwise it's just going to be match. Now what's the typing of this guy? Yeah, now it knows that it's definitely always a function, so we should be able to use that here. Ha! And because the last time I compiled I had an error and I changed a couple of different files, if you've watched my previous videos, you'll know I'm very annoyed that sometimes that causes corrupt compilations in Karma. So I restarted Karma, and now we should have one failing test. Sure enough, we matched all of our values. So the filtering is not working yet. We need to actually make it do the filter. So here we're going to write actually something kind of like this, to tell you the truth. Callinfo.args is going to have to match this any, and we should probably use deep equality. That's interesting. Let's check the Angular API. If you pass in, what kinds of things can you pass in to this this request match object? Oh, look, I already searched for that recently. They're both strings. That's not going to help us. Those are going to have referential equality. Referential? Oh, whatever the word is. It doesn't need to do deep equality. Just a triple equals will show those matching, whereas in our array of arbitrary arguments, I guess it's, Angular's API is not giving me the answer, giving me a precedent to follow, so I'm going to choose for myself, and I think equality match is going to be the most useful. So, we need this to be a predicate that matches here. Let's pull this out into a function. So let's do make argument matcher with the args. Sure. So this is going to be something that has to return one of these. So it's going to convert our any array into one of these matching predicate functions. Oh, and I suppose I should make this actually a private function so that we can, once we have the typing for what this args array will actually be instead of any, I'll be able to use that as long as I have it inside here, where I'm going to have some sort of generic here to use for that array of argument, that type. So, oops, what on earth is happening? When I try and run prettier, it says no lines changed. Okay. So we're going to return a function that takes call info. Yeah, I guess we'll have to. Wow. All this, it would be. It's a little messy because I haven't done all that typing work yet to have those generics available. This will get cleaned up in that final, or in maybe final video in the series. We're going to return a function that, I don't have to actually specify that for these arrow functions. This is going to return there we go. That is going to return whether call is equal. That'll do my deep equality. Call info dot args, I think, with args. Lovely. And then this dot make argument matcher. Everything is compiling, and let's see if I succeeded. Sure enough. Now, I talked about using deep equality there, which means probably I should have a test for that. Oh, that reminds me. And I'm going to probably have to call that out in the documentation of this whole thing, which leaves me remembering there's a pretty significant to-do item I missed here, which is write all the documentation, all the comments at the top of each method and at the top of each class that is going to end up in the type doc. So in the end, when we go to our when users come to ngdev and look at the API documentation, it will show up here with nice comments to explain how it all works. It'll show up in their editors and the tooltips and in their autocomplete and everything like that. And where does that? Probably should write that after I have all of the functions done so that I can use them all in the examples of the docs that I'm writing. So let's do that somewhere around this area. Okay, great. Anyway, the test now for deep equality matching for the arguments. Interesting. We're going to have to control some function, some method that accepts arguments that are more than just a string, so that there's some sort of deep equality to even care about. And it's kind of nice to use something built into the browser rather than inventing our own API just for the sake of testing it. That keeps tests more compact, easier to read, more focused. There's not going to be as much setup code, so there's less for a future reader of this test to have to understand what all this code is doing. Oh, it doesn't matter. It's just setting up some method in order to stub it to do the real work, which is going to be, basically down here. So, is there a browser asynchronous API that takes in an object rather than just like a string or a number? I've done a little bit of work with, what was that called? Indexed DB. Oh, but that wasn't promise-based. I had to write a promise-based wrapper around that. Fetch? Is fetch asynchronous? Let's see. MDN fetch. Developer.mozilla.org is the place to go for your API docs. Place I go anyway. Definitely the one I always recommend. It used to be called mdn.org or something, so that's what I'm still used to typing. And apparently Google knows what I mean. So this is, that's not the API page. That's like that's the page for the whole fetch API. I want just the fetch function. Oh, wrong shortcut. Fetch. Okay, yes, good. So this will take a resource, which could be a request object. Yeah, this does all kinds of crazy stuff for us. Let's go see if the typing will show us how we could do this nicely. So if, for example, we did window.fetch, and we want to then call fetch and pass in request info. Could be a string, but it could be a request, which, ooh, look at all this. Cache. Lots of interesting things. Okay, so this will be just fine for us. Something where, the cache is true. What? Oh, that's a more complex thing. Let's find some simpler ones. Integrity. Here we go. Keep alive is, I don't know, false. And what else? Missing the following properties. Cache, credentials. Oh, 18 more. No, that's going to require us to make a full big object, and that's way too much to worry about for this one simple test. Okay. What was the second argument to fetch? It was a request init. Ah, these are all optional. Okay, so let's do that. Let's grab this. Just use the string. And then here we'll pass in an object where we can actually test our deep, show that it has deep equality matching. So like we could do, um, what's interesting? Let's do method. Yeah, method is post. All right, beautiful. Let's do a post. Let's do two gets and a post. Now let's match to our fake URL and do method is get, and so this should give us our two results. Let's grab args1 now, and we should both have two get calls here. All right, so here's a test. I actually think it might pass right now. So let's see if that's true, and if so, we'll have to go break the code to show that it fails. Oh, never mind, looking good. Ah, right, we need it to be an object like this. It's not just the string get. That was the whole point. We're doing deep equality matches on this array, or on the things that end up in this array. Okay, now we have a passing test, but we need to make sure that if it wasn't doing deep equality matches, that the test would fail. Otherwise, this test isn't really testing what it should be. So let's go in there, and instead of doing is equal, let's make it a triple equal and see that the test fails. And we would never expect the actual argument array to be in there. The naive way to do this then would be, I could use is equal at depth, but then I need to explain what that's all about. So let's do it the long way, where each argument all right, here we go. Where every argument that was passed in, arg I, arg equals args I. Something like that. Oh, and then that can be returned directly. Okay, so this should give us shallow equality matching, I guess. We're using triple equals on each individual argument. And if that's true, we would expect this to still pass, but now this one that actually requires deep equality to fail. And let's see if the tests are working the way we think. Yep, it found no matches where it was supposed to find these two because none of them match with shallow equality. Perfect. So we can switch back to working code. And we just ran this and it worked. So we should still have good luck there. And we have our nice shorthand. Bam. Written and tested. Great. Let's move on. That was quick. Expect none. So that is, just to show you, it expects that no requests have been made which match the given URL. For us, then, that's going to be no calls have been made. Excuse me. So that's going to be a new function. Let's do it down here. Expect none. And yeah, we don't need all these tests in here. Collapse that, and here we go. I suppose there's maybe two tests to write for this. One is that it's okay when there are no matches yet, when there are no calls yet, and the other is that when there are calls, but they don't match, that it works there. What kind of API do we get for this? Same kind of thing where you could pass in a, oh, that's interesting. You could pass in a function or one of these like helpers. For us, that's going to be an array of arguments. That reminds me that we probably want to extend this array up to expect 1 as well as the new one we're writing, expect none. So let's write a little failing test here to remind ourselves to get back to it. So I put that under this sort of the second thing. So let's write one here for it. Same description, accepts an array of arguments to match against. And we'll just leave a failing test there to get back to. So this is similar to writing a to-do. I sometimes will go either way. They're sort of equivalent to me. What I'm not going to do is write two tests here because the second one, which I need to update the description on, is about using deep equality matching. And so it uses deep equality matching for the arguments shorthand. I only wrote code once to do the deep equality matching, so I only want to write one test for it. And so the question is, where do I put that test? I could put it in some sort of describe about this make argument matcher, but and maybe that would make sense. I don't normally like to move, sort of. I like my tests to mirror the public, the user-facing features, and the user isn't going to know anything about some private function, and so I kind of like to keep that out of the descriptions of my tests. Now, at the same time, if I only write the test here under match, I'm again using sort of knowledge of my private API of the implementation of my API to say that, well, actually, expect 1 delegates to match, and so as long as match is doing deep equality, then expect 1 certainly will be. So it's choosing the lesser of the two evils, and the lesser to me, I suppose, it's a toss-up. I don't really love either option, but I'm not going to love any other options I've familiar with either. So I'm just going to leave it like this. I'm only going to test this sort of edge case or its feature in the match, the block for the match function. And so, and similarly, I will not test it in the expect none. Okay. So I've got two things outstanding. They both sort of need this, this test. Let me finish an outline here for this expect none, and then we'll start filling them in, all the failures. Um, Another option is instead of having this fail inside here, you can write it without any callback at all. And then Jasmine, here, I'll show you what it does. Well, Jasmine will show it in yellow saying, hey, this test has no expectations. Or maybe it says something even, yeah, it doesn't really say anything. Anyway, it's in yellow to flag to you that that's sort of an outstanding, that's like a to-do item. I don't tend to use that because that's not going to be picked up as a failure in my continuous integration. So every time I push a new commit to GitHub, I've got GitHub Actions set up that are going to run my tests and report if there's a failure and show up in GitHub with a red X somewhere that I notice um, to help catch things, to make sure I didn't forget to run the test suite or something like that before I, deploy it and send it off to all of my users. So that's the reason I don't use that built-in feature. I want to have an actual test failure like that so that it's obvious there's something that I still need to do before I can release this to the public. Okay, so what is this thing? Finish our outline. Expect none. Oh, this isn't even really part of the outline. We want expect none. It's nice. It's inspiration if we just go read the description from here. Expects that no requests have been made which match. So we said we wanted two of them. It throws an error if no call matches. It accepts the arguments shorthand. Isn't that what I... accepts an array of arguments to match against. Okay, fair enough. And throw, let's see. I want to have a sanity check for the case where there are no... Oh, now wait a minute. I was about to say I want a sanity check for the case when there are no calls made yet. But let's hold off on that. Let's make one here, but say maybe a sanity check for that, because again I'm delegating to match, and if it turns out that when the code for this doesn't have to worry about it, all the tests needed for that are already in that match describe block, then I'm just going to leave it out of this one. Where have I done this before? Yeah, can gracefully handle. So we might be doing one of these, but we're not sure yet. Okay. So let's start filling in some of these failures. Start from the top, I suppose. It accepts an array of arguments to match against. This is expect one. Right, so this is the sanity check that this guy is allowed to take one of these. Yes, and we have a failure in here. We are going to have to write special code in this function to handle that case, and so we should definitely have a test for it. And it looks like it's in this fancy error messaging, which is fine. Let's see what happens in the Angular API when we pass in one of these. What was it? One of those request match objects, and see how Angular structures its error messages And we'll do a similar thing in ours, because the whole point of this thing that we're writing is to match how Angular does its testing API. So let's just comment that out for a moment and go back here. This is just a place that I found in a previous video to conveniently test error messages. So expect one can take, no, we're doing expect one. Can take a request match object where the method is something. Let's try that. So let's make two calls. These are where the method is delete. So we should definitely have a test failure there, and we can see what the error message looks like. Expected one matching request for criteria match method delete URL any. Oh, the method is delete and the URL is any. So they're actually writing out the full, they're sort of like nicely formatting the full like string representation of this match object that you pass in. And our match objects are completely arbitrary. We don't have just these two strings, right? So in Angular's interface, this is the match object you could pass in. For us, it's an array of any. So maybe we could just do let's just interpolate that thing in there and see what that looks like. And then if that just says like object, we can turn that into like a JSON stringify or something. So I'm not ready to write a failing test because I need to experiment a bit to see what the message is actually going to look like. I suppose the failing test could be, even though the test isn't going to be finalized yet, it could still be useful to see what the error message looks like that I end up with. Let's put this back so that's not getting in our way, and let's start from this test. And what we're testing really isn't that it accepts an array, it's that the error message, that is fine. That part of the functionality is taken care of by delegating to match, but we still need to test that the error messaging looks good when we have an array of arguments to match against. So let's move this down to the section about error messages. In fact, let's make a separate describe block for the error messages. That's errors. That's errors. Yeah, all of this is, wow. Most of the tests that are specific to this function that aren't coming just from the delegated match functionality are all about these fancy error messages. Describe error message. Let me get this in there before I forget that it's in my clipboard, and then move this down. And nope, not that one, this one. Here we are. Let's just put it at the bottom. I feel like we're getting deep into the weeds. I like to do the most common happy path functionality at the top and move down into the deep edge cases at the bottom. And I feel like that's sort of where we are. And maybe what we really want is something to copy one of these tests that's using the error message. Yeah, so there are no calls. This is a great one to start with. So instead of expecting one true, let's do expect one where we're not going to pass in its own description. We're going to expect one where the arguments are, I don't know. Yeah, to really test how this is going to work in that test case I was talking about with how is it going to represent this array of arbitrary things. Let's make it kind of deep. And let's go to the fetch API that we were using before. So window, so that we can legally expect there might have possibly been one that matches the format we have here. That way, when we go make the typing all nice later, we're not going to get a typing error here saying, we couldn't possibly have expected that because the method won't even accept it. So we're going to control window.fetch, and we're going to expect it to have some URL where the method is get. And then we're going to expect criterion. What goes here? We're going to find out by running it and playing with it and getting it to be a reasonable error message. Then we'll go fix this to match it. Okay, so we need to get the typing to match this again. And deal with it. So we're getting into a situation where there's a lot of logic around building up the string for this message. So let's bring that down into a separate function. This dot build error message, and we'll pass it whatever it needs once we get there. And this is going to return a string. We might pass in, we're going to need the same arguments. And we're going to need that down here. Oh, and we're going to need to see what the matches actually are. Interesting. Okay, so we're going to need match, description, and matches. Lovely. So let's use our editor to fill this in with typing for us. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Now we're in a place where we could make this. We're going to have to make this fancy. So if there's no description, oh, I wonder if the editor had some fancy way to transform that for me. Oh, nope. This question equal operator is brand new. Maybe someday they'll have some way to unwrap that into an if statement for me automatically. So if there isn't one, we're going to change it to this. However, this is the case where if is function. If match is a function, we use this fancy string. else we're going to assume it's an array. I used isArray somewhere before, and now I'm using isFunction. Why don't I be consistent about that? In match, I used isArray, array.isArray. So yeah, let's. Okay. So if it's an array, the description is match by arguments match. Let's try that and see what that looks like. Oh, and I got an error in Karma, so let me just restart that. I know I edited both of these files. I don't know when that error showed up. If they both had changes when that error showed up, that's when we have a problem. So annoying. Okay. So we expected it to have what goes here, but instead it had object. Oh, some URL, but then just object. And so we could do a JSON stringify, maybe. I wonder if Jasmine has something built in that stringifies objects, and then maybe Jasmine has some framework stuff. I know I've seen this. I don't remember if it was in Jasmine or Mocha or somewhere, but users could register their own sort of like stringifiers. Let's see if that was Jasmine, and if so, we should definitely use that. Jasmine customize toString, something like that. Casting, custom matcher, string interpret. Well, not seeing much yet. What is this? Pretty printing object comparison. Okay. So you can use a custom matcher, which is using JSON.stringify. Okay. What's number 2? Override jasmine.pp. Okay, so Jasmine has a pretty print function. I remember seeing that once before, but I feel like that's undocumented, in which case I don't want to try to support that or use it, I guess, in my case. Util.inspect. Okay, before I keep reading, let me just go verify that that is indeed a private API thing. Custom matcher. The word appropriate. Custom object formatters? That seems like exactly what we want. You can now customize how Jasmine describes your objects in match or failure messages by defining your own simply a function that returns a string. Yup. Sudoku game. I made a Sudoku app. To register the custom object formatter, add custom object formatter. Okay, great. And how do I then use Jasmine's, I guess, pretty printing in my error message? In order to use the custom object formatters, it must either use matchutils.prettyprint, okay, so that is public API, or allow Jasmine to generate the message by returning a result object with no message property. Well, that's not an option for us, because if we throw an error, which is how Angular's stubbing framework works, it reports a failure by throwing an error. An error has a message field. So unless we can get a hold of this guy from the outside world instead of inside a custom matcher, I don't think we have this available to us. It formats a value for use in matcher failure. Yep, that's what I want. Matcher util. Do not construct this directly. Jasmine will construct one and pass it to matchers and asymmetric equality testers. Okay. I'm pretty sure that means that we can't use it for the way that we're designing our test failures to mirror Angular's. All right. Well, that's cool. I learned a lot about cool things you can do with Jasmine. Not useful for this particular purpose, though. So let's just do json.stringify and see how that looks. Oops, not the function. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. I think that works for me. So this is now the message we expect in our test. What goes here? That goes here. Oh, interesting. We've got like awkwardly, we have right, double quotes inside double quotes. I don't know. We just make them single quotes to feel like, oh, but then that's here. Okay, we're just gonna leave that. I feel like Angular went a little overboard making their fancy error messages there. I see the use of some of it. It's nice to see in your test output enough information to understand what's going on and where you need to find the fix. But all you really need is the information. You don't need it to be formatted all like human English grammar niceness. This came up before with this, if there are no matches, it prints the word none instead of the number 0. And so I'm not going to go too crazy with, making sure all the single double quotes are lining up nicely. So I think that should drop us from 4 failures down to 3. Nope. Expected 1 matching request for Katrine. Expected 1 match by right. We need to get this in the string. Match by arguments. Match by arguments. How about now? 3. All right. Cool. That took a bit of investigation. So I will maybe finish up these tests and call that a wrap. Let's find fail. They're all down here in this expected none, which is sort of where we thought we were going in this video at the beginning, where I thought we were going. Um, Live coding does not go the way you plan often. Which is to say that coding does not often go the way you plan. um, this is, this is why estimating how long it's going to take to accomplish some feature is difficult. Now, the kinds of distractions I'm running across are a little bit extra because I'm talking through everything for the sake of the video. But even when you're at work and you're just working on, if you're doing agile user stories, you pull a user story, and during your sizing meeting the week before, everyone thought through it and tried to imagine what would have to happen and how long it would all take. You're going to run into stuff like this. The best you can hope for in a size for stories is that you are, first of all, consistent. That's the main goal. But, that your velocity for your sprints is doesn't deviate too much. You don't have to carry over or pull in stories too much. You're never going to get it right because the nature of software development is you're doing things that you haven't done before. Maybe you've done similar things, and the more similar it is to things you've done before, the better you can estimate it. But as we're writing software, we're continually, if we do something 2 or 3 times, we realize, all right, we need to build a framework around this. We need to make helper methods for this. We need to, and so the next time you do it, you're not just going to copy paste tweak because that ends up with unmaintainable code in the end. You're going to refactor. And now you haven't done this refactor before, and so you don't know how long that's going to take. It's just, the nature of software is we're teaching the computer how to do something. If the computer already knows, then we can tell you, we don't need to do anything. If the computer doesn't know, then we're doing something new. We have to write something new that we haven't written before. Anyway, long tangent. And where did it start from? Yes, it started from coming back and seeing that we're finally going to start working on the feature that I thought we were at the beginning of this video. Or a lot closer to the beginning. Right. So, expect none throws an error if no call matches. No, if any call matches. Right. So that's kind of going to be like expect one. I feel like, yeah, this is good enough. Let's do this, but let's expect none with the value of 2. That's good. And we are going to expect this to throw an error. With some message in it. Great, which means now we can actually make our expect none function. It's probably going to be somewhat similar to expect one. Yeah, we'll find our matches. If the length is greater than 0, we're going to throw an error, and that's it, right? So this is going to return nothing. that. Okay, that's feeling good. And I can see that we're going to have to tweak this build error message thing to yeah, expected one matching request. We're going to have to expect that, tweak that message there. We'll see. We'll see how that works when we get there. Okay. Expected a function to throw an exception with this message. It's probably going to be similar to this, but not exactly. We have to go check out the Angular API again, simulate something similar to this, and see how they structure their error message for expect none instead of expect one. So that's easy enough. Expected 0 matching requests. Found 1. So that looks like the same format. We just plug in a different string here. Makes sense. So we expected 0. Ooh, did they pluralize that? Come on, guys, you're killing me. That is not important. we're gonna do that. In fact, we're going to need to do that for all of our test messages that we made anywhere. So any place that does that, we're going to instead expect it to have that sort of shorthand for, could be plural, maybe not. We don't really care, and you shouldn't either. But we do need to pass in this expectation. This customize this part of the string. So we want to interpolate in here expected, I don't know, matches, let's put it, I don't know, here. Expected num is a string. Expected, oops, num, expected, let's call it expected match count. And so here, the expected match count is 1, because we are in expect num, oops. Here, it's 0. Let's see how we're doing. Ooh, lots of problems. We have to make our same adjustment there. Failing tests, red, green. There we go. Okay, we're passing. This is the one from actual Angular. We can undo that guy. And that's great. Got that test covered. Yep. Now we need to do something similar, but where there... Yep, something similar, but with an array. I guess that should be similar to this guy up here. Oops, this guy. Oh, I never renamed that. Formats the error message nicely when using argument I'm going to get myself into this world where I have to test this in every function that uses these error messages, and I don't want to be in that world. So I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to go back to what I said I wasn't going to do before. And split off a separate describe block for this build error message. Again, I was stuck between two hard decisions. The user doesn't know that this exists, and so I don't like to put it in my test. Up in this top level, like I'll use it. I'll use private implementation knowledge inside the code of the test, but I don't like to use it in the descriptions of the tests. I can't justify that to you off the top of my head, but it feels right, and I think that's actually useful for some reason. I just don't know what it is off the top of my head. However, if I don't use special knowledge, I'm going to end up repeating tests all over the place because all the edge cases that this handles, then I would then have to handle for both match and expect none for when they throw errors, and that's even worse. So I'm going to extract this out and put all the cover all the edge cases here, and then just have one sanity check to make sure that the function is being used correctly in my two functions that call it. So that means we can move this guy down in there. We're going to want one for, yep, this, including the name of the function. That's perfect. It includes the passed in description. That should be up here somewhere. Includes the given description. Perfect. I'm just moving tests. I don't need to change them. I'm just moving the responsibility of where I test them so that I don't feel like I need to repeat them. Okay, so it uses the description, it uses the array, it uses the name. This is great. We have none versus, I don't want to test for that. Sorry, Angular. We'll have a test for it includes the number of matches found. And for this, I don't think I have a test specifically for that yet. It's sort of embedded in all these error messages, but maybe I can start from this one and tweak it to meet our needs. To, I think, include found to, no, to contain, there we go. And let's do one with three, where there's 3 calls and only 2 of them match, because then I'm going to feel like I've nicely covered something sort of value 3. So we're going to expect 1. Gosh, okay. We're going to want something more like this format. Oh, this format, but down here. So now, yeah, that feels about right. Formats the error message when using the arguments shorthand, and really the only part of the message we're testing here is that. to contain a regex, how do I get the partial string match in a two-throw error? Is there some sort of like Jasmine dot, we have object containing, is there something similar for like string containing, array containing, custom equality tester? I could go crazy and write one of those. That feels like overkill. String matching. Great. Jasmine dot, let's see if that works. String matching this guy. What? No overloaded a string or a regex? I don't understand this error message. No overload matches this call. String matching takes a string and passing a string. Oops. What have I done wrong? Maybe to throw error cannot accept an asymmetric matcher. Oh, this requires a string or a regex. Oh, that's so sad. That's so sad. Why didn't I understand that the error message was saying that that was the wrong type for the function? Thought it was saying that this call itself was illegal. Okay, well, anyway. Argument of type asymmetric matcher is not assignable to, and that's the constructor for a regex, I guess. I don't know, something like that. No. I don't, yeah. Asymmetric matcher string provides no match for the signature of something that takes an array of arguments and returns an error? There's something, I feel like there's something here. Ah, this one. We could take in a function. What is this syntax? Is this something we can use? What are you doing, Jasmine? To throw error. Maybe that's this guy. To throw error. So we can optionally take in an error constructor. The object that was thrown needs to be an instance of. Wow. That was very unclear from the documentation here. It'd be great if they could like put those comments in line so it just showed up in my editor. Ooh, to throw matching. What's that? To throw matching. Expect a function to throw something matching a predicate that takes the thrown exception as its parameter and turns true if it matches. There we go. That's something we can use. To throw matching an error where error dot message error, which is an error, matches this guy. Oh, is match. There's some kind of I forget that JavaScript regex match. All the different ways we can do the string.match. Is there a string.isMatch or something that just returns a Boolean, or do I need to convert whatever it returns into a Boolean myself? Nope. Returns a regex match array or null. I mean, that's Boolean-like. We'll call that good enough. So we'll say this is a match, and we need to turn that into something Boolean looking. And now I feel like I need to play with this a bit. I'm not sure whether it's going to treat this curly brace as special regex syntax, or if because I gave it a string, it's going to try and do an actual string match. Oh wait, I can do string includes. I don't need a regex, or contains, maybe it is. There we go. Now we got it. So we expect the error message. Okay, so that turned out to be a lot more work than I thought. But what was I doing there? Why not just leave the full error message string instead of going to all the trouble of figuring out how to just test a substring of it? Basically, it's the same kind of concept. Keep the test as succinct and targeted and focused as you can without making it, while still keeping it readable. The whole point is to make it as readable as possible. And so, if I'm up here and I'm expecting to include the name of the function, and now what I'm actually expecting is, oh, in here, that's the name of the function. What's all this other junk? We don't care, right? So on one hand, so there's two, that's one benefit. Another lesser benefit in my mind is that if we go change this to be s in parentheses here, we don't have as many tests that need to be updated that feel like they should be unrelated, right? Why would I need to update a test that says it includes the name if I'm not changing the name? Okay, so let's do something similar to this. But with this message, and only the part of it that we actually care about. The name. So let's do that part. Great. Includes the given description when throwing an error. So that's again going to be this part. Whoa. Great. And now finally down here, it includes the number of matches found. We just need to use our new syntax we figured out. And the string we're trying to match on is just that. Found 2. Love it. Now, I see there was an error here in Karma at some point along the way, so I'm going to restart it and see how we're doing with the actual tests. What's going on? Okay, another annoying thing about Karma, sometimes it gets stuck looping infinitely. And how have I gotten this to work before? I think I've run without the debug to get it to start working. No. Do I need this to be in a new tab or something? Oops. There we go. Now, I don't know. Maybe I had to close the developer tools. I've haven't quite figured out the exact steps to work around that problem yet. I don't know what happened with Jasmine. It didn't have all these problems. Certainly not a year ago. Maybe not even with the last version of Angular. I don't remember exactly. Okay. Hey, that's everything passing. This was our test that we intentionally made fail. Oh, this is an old version, a cached version of debug.html. That's why it passed. Okay, there we go. Okay. Expect. Boom. Found something else. So expected one matching request. Oh, look, that. Yeah, matching request for match by function. Ah, right, we changed none to 0. Okay. Let's search for none. Let's search for found none and just replace it with found 0. Sweet. Great. Let me just take a look at this outline and make sure it still makes sense. We moved a lot of things out of this one. Throws an error when there have been no calls. Throws an error when there's more than one match. That all seems good. Okay, I like all of that. Let's see if there's anything up here in match that we don't need anymore because we moved stuff down here that maybe is shared in common. No, not here because match doesn't call build error message, so how could it have any of the tests from it? Match doesn't throw errors. Okay, but in expect none, right, accepts an array of arguments to match against. Good. Graceland. Okay. I think the outline is looking great. And we can just continue with whatever is failing, which is only this last test. Awesome. Nope. I was just looking back to make sure I wasn't in the middle of anything, and I was. Here we're accepting an array of arguments to match against, and we're not actually doing that yet. This is where we left off. It accepts an array of arguments to match against. So we need to do that. But is this too much? I mean, this should show what the description claims, and it should probably work. But it looks like a pretty long. Oops. Oh no. Because the error message itself changed, the matcher part of it. Right, so that kind of already shows us this is maybe testing too much and it can be more focused. It accepts an array of arguments to match against. So let's go. I don't think we care about. No, I guess I do kind of like it. We want to show some test that not just you can pass in an array, but that it's passing it along to the match function correctly, basically, with our knowledge of the internal workings. Which means we should probably show that it actually finds the right match. Yeah. So let's just change this to our new syntax and show that it found one, and that should cover it. Yep, this syntax. Great. Now, our last one is we were going to see if we needed to write a test to cover when no call matches or if that's all just sort of automatic. And it looks like it's automatic. Right, we have oh, no. That's okay. Sorry. We've got the error cases. We also need to show that it doesn't throw an error. It does not throw an error when no call matches. Yeah, obviously. So let's find one of our read text ones to copy. Put that here. We're going to, we don't need to make any calls. We just need to stub it out. Then we're going to say expect none. We don't even care what the value is there. That's fine. To not to throw error. And then let's start with a failing test. Let's make it throw an error, even when the match length is 0. And that test should fail. But then if we put this back, everything else should still be working, and our new test should not throw an error. Bam! Beautiful. So that gives us expect none. And this feels plenty long for one video. So let's review our diff, which that's the right keyboard shortcut. Let's review our diff and make sure there's nothing that we left outstanding to cover, and then make a commit, and I will bid you farewell. So our to-do, I rearranged, I prioritized it. That was before I started the video. Sorry about that. You see some noise in this diff, but the real relevant part is that we removed the expect none. Yes, we added this any shorthand. I'm going to start writing down. We added arguments shorthand to expect one, and we added expect none. Mm-hmm. One and match. Right, and this was the actual code to handle the array. Oh, I want to leave myself a to-do about typing down on this function as well, so that I am sure to catch that in the upcoming video. Okay, that should do it. Let's commit that, and thanks for watching, for getting through this far. I hope you, if you're here, that all of your time spent has been useful in some way. Let me know. Let me know how, if you're willing, down in the comments. And once this is all done, maybe you will find it interesting to actually use slibs in your projects and be able to test asynchronous methods with this new consistent Angular style paradigm. Have yourselves a great day or night or morning or whatever time it is for you.